Right.
Oh, there you go.
All right. Then with that, we'll call this meeting of the Public Works Committee to order at 6:30 p.m. on November 22nd, 2021. We have a quorum present, so we can do business.
Yep, I show all members present except Carl Stone.
Okay, well, then
So,
Carrie came in somewhere along the line. Hi, Carrie. Our first item of business is the minutes of November 11th.
I would
Don.
move approval.
I'll second, Don.
All right, we have a motion to approve those minutes and a second. Is there discussion regarding the minutes? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the minutes of November 8th are approved.
And Bob, I was going to abstain since I wasn't at the last meeting.
Okay, that's fine. Can you note that, please, Sean?
you bet.
All right, next item on our agenda is Middleton Beach Road Reconstruction Plan approval. And we have responses to the two issues that we raised at the last meeting. Sean, you want to review those quickly for us?
Sure. Dan Perry, who's on the line tonight, and our project manager, Sean Ulzard, is also available if there are questions, but they looked into the two issues up at the north cul-de-sac that were still in question. One was rounding the northeast corner of pavement, which had been squared off, and the other was consideration of adding a central island in that cul-de-sac. Really, it gets into the larger wheelbase vehicles. In particular, the fire department wouldn't be able to turn around, which would require sort of a Y turn up there without going through the central island. To do a simple left-hand turn trying to go around the island would track them off into the grass by quite a bit. So when there's snow, it just wouldn't be possible. But even when it's grass, it would potentially get pretty rutted up with a larger vehicle. So the recommendation is to go ahead and round off that northeast corner, but not to put an island in.
All right. Sean, would you do me a favor as usual too, if there are people from the general public, from the audience that have hands up and wish to speak, would you note that? Because I don't see that on my screen.
Sure. I'll try to keep an eye on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Committee members have any questions, comments, concerns?
No.
No, it looked pretty straightforward. It was great that we asked the question, and I appreciate the fact that the professionals followed up and got us answers. It seems like the rounding, I would say, of the a little bit more rounding of the cul-de-sac definitely looks like it's doable, but it seems to have too many problems to do the other idea, which was to put the island in. So I'm ready to make a motion if nobody has any other comments.
And I don't know if Ginny, you had any comments from the neighborhood or your road group to pass along?
I had submitted those ahead of time, and yes, they're in favor of the rounding. We didn't really have a consensus on the island, so I think it's fine the way you're proposing it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. I think
Well-
our primary concern here ought to be functionality of it, and the functionality is enhanced by New Island.
So I would make the motion that we recommend rounding or putting a radius on that northerly cul-de-sac, but not adding the landscape island in the middle of the cul-de-sac.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second to Robert's motion?
This is Susan. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the committee members? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the motion is carried. So
So,
that doesn't have to go anywhere else, does it, Sean? That's just the final design approval, or does that need to go to the full council?
Nope. So that's the end of the final design now. So we're
Okay.
getting ready for bidding.
All right,
so
Ginny?
can I make one last comment? I just, on behalf of the neighbors on Middleton Beach Road, I just like to thank the committee and Public Works and Bierbecker under Dan Perry's leadership for the work that you've done on this. I think our residents are really happy with the plan and that it will certainly improve the neighborhood, but it still preserves some of the quaintness and the uniqueness of the neighborhood as well as the safety for our citizens walking the streets. So thank you for the work that you've done on this. And we look forward to working with you as we move into the construction phase next year.
Thank you, Jimmy, for those comments.
And thank you for those comments, and thank you for marshaling the neighborhood support and comments. Your input has been very helpful, I think, to the committee and to the folks doing the design work, and it has made our job quite a bit easier by having well thought out, cogent comments about the design. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is a lot of work, but it's really appreciated.
Okay, item 3 is Middleton Beach Road Reconstruction, amendment number 1 to the agreement for design engineering services.
Right, so Dan prepared a couple of brief descriptions and costs for elements of design, final design that were out of scope in our original agreement that came up largely that we have to get into Madison's Park, clean up some easement issues, do some extra abandonments of old sewer main, and then some work at the pumping station itself that we hadn't initially thought of, but I'm glad they caught it. So that's got some extra design cost associated with it. So there's this proposed amendment to catch up on that.
Okay, that seemed to be fairly straightforward. Committee, any questions, comments?
I'll make a motion to recommend to the Finance Committee and Common Council to approve the amendment number 1 to the agreement with Bierbecker for the not to exceed $4,400.
All right, thank you, Carrie. Is there a second to Carrie's motion?
This is Robert. I would second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there discussion with respect to this motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and that will be our recommendation to the Finance Committee and the Council. Item 4, Lake Street Apartments Traffic Impact Analysis Approval.
Right, so we got the final report in and I read it through. This is actually in follow-up to an initial traffic impact analysis of just one intersection at Allen Boulevard and Lake Street. And we didn't bring that to the committee because it wasn't the full traffic impact analysis. It was really at the request of the developer just to earlier in the process see what the likely effect of the very closest intersection was. This now is the full traffic impact analysis. And pretty much as expected after that phase 1 analysis of just one intersection, the results are in a broad umbrella that there are some problems, some significant problems at some of the area intersections, but there aren't any necessary improvements to roadways or intersections attributable to the traffic associated with this proposed development.
All right, so what we would be looking at here, Sean, is simply approving this report. And any of the recommendations of that report that might deal with improvements to some of those intersections would come at some other point in time when we're looking at construction of that development, or would those be totally separate issues that might be brought up somewhere along the line?
These really are city budget issues, not associated with this development. And they could be done, frankly, at any time. I mean, what this report is pointing out is that there are already problems today. They're
Right.
likely enough to get worse over time as traffic grows, not just locally, but regionally. And so, as I'm sure you've all experienced, depending on time of day and sometimes season of year, traffic can get pretty interesting at Century and Allen. So, but also at Allen and Lake or Middleton Springs Drive. I mean, if you try to get a cup of coffee at the wrong time of day, you have a hard time getting back out onto Allen or Century. So
Yeah, Sean, I go to Harbor Athletic Club, and I turn left onto Allen out from Harbor, and that is challenging. And lots of times I'm lucky enough that it's not so much traffic, I'm kind of there in off hours, but even then it can be challenging. So I do have some concerns about if there was more traffic on that street, because you're essentially you're crossing those two lanes of traffic into if you're turning left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we rebuilt that years ago, to move those northbound lanes over a little bit and create a wider median area in which many passenger cars can wait. But it's not obvious or intuitive with that curve right there in Allen Boulevard, whether or not, where you're safe to wait, right? So that was one of the recommendations I was glad to see is, maybe we could improve how we mark that or sign it or something that lets people know there's 30 feet of space out there in which to position a vehicle, to get past northbound traffic before joining southbound traffic.
Sean, I have two questions. The first one is, so the apartment building, if we compared it to Captain Bill's, will actually be less traffic,
Well,
or at least
in the morning, I think it has more traffic, but in the
it might have
afternoon,
more in
I
the
think it
morning,
has
but
less traffic.
significantly less at night.
At night, I think that's really fair to say, sure. Or a restaurant with the seating capacity of a Captain Bill's, right?
Or if that had been turned into a restaurant that was open all day, it could really be bad.
Well, and the other thing that we're dealing with in these traffic impact analyses during the time of COVID is traffic has kind of flattened out. So we don't have as pronounced a peak in the morning and afternoon as we used to have. It's sort of spread out through the whole day a little bit. And part of that, I think, comes from work at home, commuting patterns changed. Sometimes people are going in, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're out running errands in the middle of the day because things are just a lot more flexible. Maybe not for every individual, but across the board.
Right.
And that can be a really good thing for transportation corridors, but we don't know if it'll last. So we're always looking at an eye like, well, what if things go back to the way they used to be?
So if Harbor had more people going in there, that would worsen this.
Well, a lot of it depends on time of day, right? So what we're looking at is peak morning and peak afternoon, but we're not looking at peak noon or peak Saturday. So a lot of that matters too, is when are we looking at it?
Yeah. The other one, is Allen Boulevard a county road?
Yes.
So any improvements on it would have to work with the county.
Well, within reason, we always coordinate before we do anything, obviously, with their road, but a lot of things they defer to us.
So if we wanted to improve it, we could at our cost.
I think they're pretty open to that, right? So when we added a traffic signal at Maywood and Allen, They didn't object to that. Right, they said,
Okay.
if you pay for it and you maintain it, as long as it serves our purposes, go right ahead. They didn't put up any roadblocks to that.
Sean,
Okay.
who maintains Allen Boulevard now, plowing and stuff? I thought when they resurfaced it the last time, part of the deal was that then it was going to get turned over to the city to take care of. No,
For University Avenue, that's true, but not Allen Boulevard.
not Allen and not Century.
Correct, yep.
Okay.
So Sean, right now, is it not warranting like a light at Lake Street and Allen?
On Lake at Allen, this report says it does meet one of the 8 warrants for consideration of a traffic signal. It obviously doesn't get into the operational study of would that function so close to Century and Allen. A previous study that we had from, I think, 2007 said, don't try it, which is why the city, at least in part, why the city put one in at Maywood instead, to try to create a bit of a gap at Lake Street, because we couldn't do it right at Lake Street. This report suggests maybe it could be done. It would take a lot of study, and it does state that even though the one more warrant doesn't justify a traffic signal, they think it could be done. They're just acknowledging that it would take a lot of sort of monitoring and adjusting as traffic patterns change. It's kind of right always on the edge of inefficient. So they would just expect us to really closely monitor it and be changing timings.
Yeah, I think that might be interesting to look into. Just again, like just my experience, there's so many people that from Lake Street, when you're there, some people are turning right, which that's not a problem. Some people are turning left, which I mentioned that can be pretty hairy. And then some people go straight across, right, to go to Starbucks. That's very common. I see that all the time. And again, that's just where I feel like if there's more traffic on that road, I'm a little concerned about that, how that would function.
Yeah, I don't
There's also
disagree.
the problem on Middleton Springs Road. There's a lot of traffic there.
Yes, there
At the
is.
moment, with the shopping center not fully open and Starbucks only open half a day, I think we're going to be surprised when things open back up at how busy that intersection is. I know I won't even try to turn left out of Middleton Springs. I go right and sort of do a U-turn at one of the
Yeah.
places
that's-
or go up Maywood.
The right turn U-turn is a good solution a lot of times to an impossible left turn, but
Yeah.
not many people think that way just yet.
Oh, okay. I just
Bob,
don't like trying to turn left out of there. There's too many things to watch.
I don't blame you. There's a lot going on. Bob, I want to let you know Tom Yost put his hand up.
Okay. Tom, please make a comment or ask a question if you would like to.
Yeah, I noticed, I quickly tried to skim that traffic impact report. I think it's 30 pages. And it mentioned, I think, bicycle and pedestrian traffic also. But then I searched the whole document for sidewalks and there's no mention of that. And so is this discussion also addressing pedestrian traffic and sidewalks?
Not sidewalks, but the crossings at the intersections were looked at. And one of the recommendations is for us to look into the crosswalk situation at Century and Allen in particular, where right now crossing east-west across Allen, number one, it's a 2-stage crossing maneuver just because of the sheer distance involved, but the alignment of those crosswalks, the author said, really could be improved anyway, just on its own merits. So there's a timing issue, but there's also an alignment issue. And the timing issue is inexpensive to deal with, but the alignment issue, I think, might be worth looking into. It'd cost something to reposition signals and rebuild that little splitter island for the right turn lanes. But there would be some, I think, real advantages to doing it. So I want to make a note for that in a future capital budget request to take that on.
Okay. So the question before us this evening is approving the TIA report.
Correct, yeah.
This is Don. I move we approve.
We have a motion from Don. Is there a second to that motion?
This is Robert. I would second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the motion is approved. And we have approved the traffic impact analysis report. Next issue, Bruce Company redevelopment, another TIA scope, this time a scope of work agreement.
Yeah, so I put into our packets the proposal from SRF, our traffic consultant. And we looked at it for a while, and they offered up that they could have some cost savings if we would modify the scope of this study to include only 16 intersections instead of 22 intersections as the TIA guidelines would suggest. Partly because it's the professional opinion of our traffic consultant that those others are starting to get a bit remote from the influence area of this development project, but also just the sheer data handling and reporting of all of those intersections just is going to take extra resources and time and space and everything. And his feeling is we're just not going to get as much out of it as the guidelines might suggest. So I appreciated that. And I'm in favor of recommending that we modify the scope as suggested, which reduces the price. I'm sure that's to the benefit of the developer to some degree. And it may save a little bit of time, but at least we're not doing something that has minimal return on it. The other
John, why did
question
we come up with 20-something intersections? Some are
They're-
fairly far away.
they're based on a distance from the development site per our guidelines. Our guidelines just say, traffic signals within, I think it's half a mile, and then major intersections within, I can't remember what it was offhand. Actually, it might have been signalized intersections within a mile and major unsignalized intersections within half a mile.
Okay,
There's a distance parameter to this. So we just draw a circle and say you're in or you're out. But he was just applying some sort of ground truth besides that and said, really, what's your benefit here? We can do it. I'm not saying we can't or even that we shouldn't. I'm just saying I appreciate his professional opinion that we could trim this down a little bit.
Sean, could we take a look at that map that was in the material so that we could see which intersections are being eliminated?
So up at Tribeca Graber, that one would stay in, but it would be over at Nursery and Airport. That would be proposed to come out. I'm just trying scanning down a bit before I lose it. So at High Road and Century Avenue would go away. And then some of the University Avenue stuff that gets a little bit remote, and then downtown and over by the Beltline ramps west of the Beltline would go away.
what was the rationale for High Road and Century
Being in the study or being taken out?
being taken out?
Yeah, I think it was mostly just, if we're trying to get to Century Avenue, unless somebody from this development is trying to go north on High Road, they're unlikely to go through this intersection. They're either going to go to Donna Drive and Century Avenue or up Parmenter Street to the Beltline.
I guess I
or
might
Century Avenue.
disagree with you. Because I go up High
You're
Road.
allowed to.
I go up High Road all the time to get to Middleton Hills. It's just a much quicker way than going through that main entrance in the Y and all of the congestion.
Oh, I agree. If the study were about Middleton Hills, for sure, this would not be in question. But when the study's about where are folks, you know, who
Right, but what I'm
live
saying
and
is
or work here coming from or going to,
there's a
think
lot
that
of
they-
people, there's a lot of people from Middleton Hills that instead of doing the Donna Drive one, will use High Road. So I think there might be more use of that than you're thinking.
well, again, this is peak hour trips. So what we'd be talking about is our folks from the peak hour living here, but working here or shopping here in a peak hour.
And
I don't know the answer to that, but I think that was the rationale.
the intersection is going to remain unchanged. It's just not going to be part of.
Yeah, you're just leaving out the data from that. I think what I'm saying is the data at 15 might be a little bit lower because people use 21 more.
Yeah, I
Then
was,
you might have an impact, an opinion too.
Susan, I was going to ask the same question because it seemed like 21 seemed closer to the study area.
Yeah, it's
and I was-
closer. The other thing, if you looked at all of Middleton Hills, other than that first little phase, all the streets exit out onto High Road. It's just much quicker to go that way than to try to go through that retail area. So you've got 3/4 of the neighborhood probably avoiding the retail area and will use High Road. That's what I'm saying.
I may be misunderstanding. What I was trying to say earlier is that folks who live or work here, if they're trying to get east on Century Avenue, to mean everything east on Century Avenue, they would probably be more likely to get down Donna Drive and
Yeah,
onto
okay.
Century
Down
Avenue.
to that one to keep going east.
And they would just not go here unless their goal was to go north on High Road or come south on High Road,
Okay.
or they just won't go through here. I mean, why would they?
I don't know.
I had a question about, does it have to be, like, do we have to remove 1, 2, it's 6 of them? Could we remove 5? Like, does it have to be
Yeah.
6?
Nope, it's a la carte. You can
Okay.
do whatever you want. This was just a suggestion from our consultant that said, I don't think you're going to get a lot out of this, but he wasn't saying don't do it or even advising not to do it. He was just saying you might want to consider this because it'll simplify things in both cost and time and also in reporting.
And Sean, who pays for this?
This is all paid by the developer. So I don't want to talk you out of anything. I just wanted to
21.
Okay, yeah. I don't want to talk you out of it. I just wanted to provide a rationale for the question.
So how much of a difference does it make financially if this, these particular intersections were left out of the study? Is it that significant?
Well, the price differential that he offered for leaving out these 6 intersections was $12,000.
So,
that would be pretty significant.
but it would be add 1 in and it's 2,000.
2K.
Probably in that ballpark. I can't speak to that, but probably in that ballpark.
Yeah, it makes sense to me to include 21 as well.
Okay.
All right, committee, any other comments? I'm stuttering a little bit at the moment because my computer screen has once again gone blank. I can hear everybody.
Oh, man.
That's about where
We can see you.
you
Yeah.
can.
You're
Yeah.
I
fine.
don't know what goes on with this machine, but I'm back at looking at the agenda. I don't know if I have to put my password and all of that kind of stuff in again to get back into this.
Shoot.
you shouldn't need to re-enter passwords since you're in, as far as we're concerned. So hopefully it's just a screen issue. But
What happens is I get a big ad that comes up on the screen in the middle of our discussion. And then if I try to get rid of that ad, I get rid of everything. Now I got another ad.
Oh, it's not an ad.
okay.
Join meeting.
Do you want to talk?
Well, let's see. Let's see.
So I have to put the
Just-
name, the number in again and stuff.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Let 'em- you can go ahead with the meeting.
Well, okay, I think
Yeah.
we have probably exhausted the discussion on this issue. If someone has a motion to make, and again, as Sean said, it can be à la carte. So if you want to put 21 back in, that would be fine.
And the only other issue that I'll raise is, the consultant was looking at our planning year in the TIA guidelines, which meshes with the MPO's planning year. That's the Metropolitan Planning Organization. They do regional planning. And that would suggest we should look out to the year 2050 for sort of the long-term effects of traffic patterns and this development at full build out and get things equalized. And our consultant said, well, if stuff gets built out sort of by 2037, you're probably going to get a good picture of that 5 years later, which is in our guidelines for a medium-sized development, but not a large-sized development. So he said, well, if you want to look at 2042 instead of 2050, you could consider that. I think the rationale for that is that if the development traffic is all on the road network, and then we just kind of incrementally keep adding background traffic, the effect of the development itself tends to wash out just a little bit within a slightly bigger context. I think on the flip side to that, a nice thing with sticking with the MPO planning horizon is we can use their numbers without a lot of massaging backwards and just take a look at it from that perspective. So,
Sean, does the
Go ahead,
MPO consider the development of housing areas north of Century
yes,
going long term?
yes.
Okay, that's another reason to keep High Road. Because a lot of stuff will be coming into that.
Yeah, and we're just trying to factor out what this development does in addition to everything else that's going on.
Yeah.
But that's fine. So there's that question too. Do we want to shoot for 2042 or 2050?
It seems like it makes city life easier if we use 2050, because that seems to mesh with the other data that will be coming to us. So I think I would recommend that we use the planning horizon of 2050 for this TIA, and that we modify the intended scope to remove 5 of the 6 numbers that they struck, but leave in number 21.
Okay.
From I guess a spatial standpoint, we'll do those, and from a timing standpoint, I would recommend the planning horizon of 2050.
Okay.
Was that a motion, Robert?
It was a poorly worded motion.
That's how I wrote it. Yeah.
If it was, I'll second it. Don.
All right,
Thanks, Don.
we have a motion and we have a second. Is there further discussion on it? I think everyone understands the intent of it is to leave number 21 in and to use 2050 as the planning horizon. Is that accurate, Robert?
That's a better summary than what I stated. Yes.
Okay, everybody understand the motion? Any further discussion? Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and that will be our action on this. This doesn't have to go anywhere else either, does it?
It doesn't. No, that'll just get the proposal refined a little bit, and then we can get it started.
Okay, good.
That should get us up to number 6, which is Village Green License Agreement
I am
proposal.
still flying blind, so please just
Okay.
go on and I'll just do this by ear, I guess, because I have no vision anymore. I have the map back on now, but it was the map that was in the original packet and it's not what Sean was dealing with.
Okay.
I get
So
rid of- Now I've
yeah.
got rid of everything. So I'm just dead in the water here. Santa's going to bring us a new computer for Christmas, perhaps.
You have been good, man.
For a long, long time. Because this computer has been on its way out for a long, long time. But all right, we're to as I recall it, I don't have anything in front of me now at all, but I think this is the easement issue with respect to the Village Green. Is that correct, Sean?
Right. So part of what we noticed in the survey for purchase of the plaza properties, Stonehorse Green, just west of the Village Green, is that there was a slight building encroachment of the west wall and part of their roof overhang into the plaza properties. But we also noticed that part of the north wall and roof overhang and that concrete ramp that goes up to the north door of the Village Green is in the Elmwood Avenue right-of-way. It's pretty old stuff. It's been there a while. This isn't something that the Boyers did. This predates that as far as we know. But it seemed a good opportunity to sort of clean up some of these property line issues to say, well, let's do a certified survey map to combine all the city plaza properties, but just quit claim over to the Village Green enough land to remove the encroachments from the plaza, and then also enter into this license agreement that permits encroachments into the right-of-way until such time as either the building needs to get rebuilt or something significant changes in terms of right-of-way needs. And we've done that, oh gosh, probably a dozen or so times in the last 10 years, I'll say, to identify and then get on paper our agreements for acknowledging an encroachment into public right-of-way, but without any need to take it away right now, just putting everyone on fair footing.
Well, it seems straightforward, so I would actually make a motion to recommend to the Common Council approval of the license agreement contingent upon the items that city staff have recommended.
And I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, committee members? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and that will be our recommendation to the council. All right, next item is water rate study, as I recall, although I can't see it at this point.
Wow, what an outstanding memory, though.
Ooh,
I did my homework. You could
I
say.
couldn't do that.
I'm impressed.
So Dave Sarbacher's here. He provided some information about just where we're at in the PSC process for the rate study. And we've never come to the committee with this information before or at this stage before that I could find. But we just wanted to share with you that one of the early steps is to come up with a revenue requirement. And as soon as we sign off on that, they start in on the actual rate design work, which is what we're really interested in as a water utility. So they've been pestering Dave every day or so about how's it going with the approval of the revenue requirement. And I think they're pretty used to this just being done at the staff level, but we thought, why not, let's at least show it to you, and then we'll touch base with them first thing tomorrow morning, just to let them know. So this isn't for any particular action, it's more for information. But if you have any questions, like I say, Dave's here.
Well, I had one question for Dave. Dave, you looked at their assumptions and so forth. Do you agree with what it is they have said, and are you gonna, I guess, agree with basing this on their information, or do you have some quarrel with any of that information?
No, I don't think so. They're the ones that'll make sure that we're doing it properly and equitably across all classes, categories, customers, and demand needs. And they're the ones that look at that a lot more closely than we do.
Okay. So you're supposed to respond to this, as I recall, by tomorrow. And if you don't have any objection by tomorrow, their recommendation or whatever is what's going to be the basis of this rate review.
Yep, and Jessica Taylor's been doing a lot of work also with us, and they've all reviewed these numbers, Bill also, and our accounting firm. So much more knowledgeable on those types of numbers than I would be, and they're all, I guess, on board with this as well.
Okay, so this is basically informational. Committee, do you have any other questions about this issue? I assume we will be hearing more about it in the future, but for now, it just will go forward as it has been proposed by the commission, I guess.
I'll just note that there is a raised hand.
Yeah, Michael Williamson, who I know would be interested in the Lake Street traffic impact analysis. So if it's not pertinent to this agenda item, if that's what it is, Michael, could we circle back on that?
Yes, if you'd circle back, that'd be fine, Sean.
I guess that's fine. Back to which one now? The Lake Street?
Yeah.
Well, why don't we
agenda item.
finish? I'm sorry. Why don't we finish up the water utility
Yeah.
agenda issue, just in case there are other questions on that?
Well, if there are no other questions on that, and if there is no action required on it, then I think we have completed this issue, unless any committee members have any other questions or comments regarding the water utility item.
No other questions. Just thanks, Dave, for your continued work on this topic.
Thanks, and I'll just let them know to move forward with the review then.
Okay, very fine. Now we can look back at the Lake Street one for a moment, I guess.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Michael Williamson. I'm a resident at the Century Harbor condos, and I'm chairman of the committee that's been working on the Captain Bill's development. And I understand the discussion that occurred earlier. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to participate in that discussion. I just wanted to put one thing on the table, and that is the concern that was expressed about Lake Street and Allen and the traffic situation there. And I know there was discussion about signalization. I've read the report. I'm quite familiar with it. I've also talked to Sean about the report. The one other option that I think bears consideration is thinking about and maybe studying putting a roundabout at that location. I realize that with the proximity to the Century Allen signalization, that it would be challenging to put another traffic signal at Allen and Lake. But I do think something needs to be done to address that traffic, which is going to increase over time. It already is a concern. It is a challenge now coming out there. And I just wondered if it might be possible for the committee or the city staff in the future to study a traffic circle at that location in order to keep traffic flowing on Lake, but also to allow traffic coming from Middleton Springs and from Lake, or continued traffic going on Allen, but to have traffic entering that intersection from Lake and Middleton Springs flow a little better. So I just wanted to put that on the table and to see if the staff could study that, what might be required in order for that to occur.
And I'll just offer, since it's not on our agenda, the committee can't really do anything with that, but I can say just at a staff level, I can make a note here to put it into the next capital budget request as an item for consideration.
Studying.
We can.
I would have one question. Traffic circles take a huge amount of space. So would that mean purchasing part of Starbucks property and the restaurant that's there, in
I-
addition to stuff on the other side, but I could see that
I
really
wish we could
impacting
discuss
Steve's
it,
Oh, we can't.
but we cannot. No.
Thank you.
All right, well, Sean, you can look at that as part of your budgeting process for the next time around, I guess, but we're not able to take any action on that this evening, authorizing it or anything.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for just letting me put it on the table.
Well,
and
thank you for your comments.
Okay.
Take a look at it, I guess.
Yeah, so we don't have anything on our agenda other than adjournment.
Well, if that's the case, I
Where
would
you're
make a
backed
motion
up to
to
a wall
adjourn.
now.
We
This
have
is
a
Carrie, I'll
motion to
second.
adjourn. Is there a second to the motion?
This is Carrie, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Before we adjourn, I'm just going to thank everybody for their participation this evening and wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and tell you that I'll see you later at some point. I hope I'll see you later at some point. I can't see any of you right now.
We can still see you fine. So.
Well, good. I'll keep smiling. All right, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. No further discussion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it and we stand adjourned. Sean, what are you looking at for December meetings at this point?
There wasn't a lot on the first meeting in December, but the second meeting